All right. Welcome to the Bookly podcast. We're going to try to do a remote episode of the podcast again this time and have a little bit more luck than last week's episode with Josh. But anybody who knows Josh knows that this is probably going to run a little bit smoother without him anyway. So, and I hope Josh is listening. But this week's episode, Leanne is back on the podcast, and this week's book is First They Killed My Father. I don't know who it's by. I should have done that. Dang it.
Ooh, I don't know.
Do you know who it's by?
No, and I don't have my phone.
Oh, that's right.
I can't look it up.
You literally just said that. All right, I'm going to pull it up. But the last episode that Leanne was on was... What was the last episode you were on?
The Soul of an Octopus or something?
Oh, yeah. That one's done that one's done really well as far as podcasts go. Like, a lot of people listen to that one.
Yeah, that's cool. That's exciting.
All right, 1 sec. I've almost got this. First They Killed My Father by... Actually, I honestly shouldn't have looked it up. Oh, my gosh. By Loung Ung. I'm sure I said that wrong.
I listened to the audiobook and I still am not brave enough to say it out loud. So,
did they say it in the audiobook? I felt like the audiobook was good for this one because I now know how to pronounce all of those names, but apparently not her name, just the names of everything else.
I don't think they said her name very much, but.
But to start it off, I want to read the just introduction of the book. I'm getting better at these introductions. My reading's getting a little bit better. So let's see. From a childhood survivor of the Cambodian genocide under the regime of Pol Pot, this riveting narrative of war crimes and desperate actions, the unnerving strength of a small girl and her family, and their triumph of spirit. Oh, this is. Wow, I just said I was better at this. One of 7 children of a high-ranking government official, Loung Ung, lived a privileged life in the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh until the age of 5. Then in April of 1975, Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge army stormed into the city, forcing Ung's family to flee and eventually to disperse. Loung was trained as a child soldier in a work camp for orphans. Her siblings were sent to labor camps, and those who survived the horrors would not be reunited until the Khmer Rouge was destroyed. Harrowing yet hopeful, Loung's powerful story is an unforgettable account of a family shaken and shattered, yet miraculously sustained by courage and love in the face of unspeakable brutality. I feel like that was one of my better reads.
It was pretty good.
That wasn't bad.
Some big words.
There were some big words in there.
No, it wasn't bad at all.
Some Asian words in there. So what did you think overall about this book? What were your overall thoughts?
I mean, it's a heavy topic and a difficult story to read. You know, it's not like happy, I wouldn't say. And like even some books that I feel like touch on like genocide or like World War II-esque have like a happier undertone, like overcoming undertone. Overcoming.
Really?
Overcoming. Like in bravery. Yeah. But yeah, this one I didn't feel like it did. But I still liked it. It's up my alley. Like these are type of books I read all the time. So
how much did you know about the Cambodian genocide?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah. Honestly, if you had asked me one thing about like Cambodia before reading this book, I would have known zero. Like I might have been able to place it on a globe.
I honestly don't even know if I would have been able to. I thought it was Laos for the longest time.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely isn't Laos.
Yeah.
Like, it's not.
Yeah. Well, it like referenced like being next door to like Vietnam. And I was like, oh yeah, like, okay. They eat pho like that. That was a little something. I was like, okay, you know, but otherwise I didn't know anything about Cambodia before this.
Did you know that they had a genocide at all? Like, did you know anything about like the Communist Party or anything like that from there? Any sort of background?
No.
Yeah, neither did I.
No, nothing at all.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Rob knew. Like the second I...
Really? I mean, I guess he's been all over. I always am like, really? Rob knew that? But hopefully Rob doesn't listen to these. But no, he's traveled all over. Like he lived all over the world. So I'm sure he knows that kind of stuff. Didn't he live in that sort of area, like Indonesia at some point?
oh, it's Pol Pot. And I was like, what? What?
I said, didn't he live in like Indonesia at some point?
Malaysia.
Okay.
That's over there, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty sure it is.
Yeah, that's how bad this is. This is how much I need reading. Is because I literally know nothing.
Exactly.
But it's kind of crazy to think. So 1975, how old were mom and dad?
I don't know when they were born.
I mean, so wait, what? You were born in 92, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were born, they were probably what? 20, were they 22 when they had you? 23?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Rob was 88.
Rob was 88?
So
this was
yeah,
like...
he was born in 88.
So this was like 12 years before Rob. 13 years before Rob. Isn't that crazy? I feel like that's pretty recent.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's very recent. And to like not have it in history books.
I mean,
I don't
I'm sure
know,
it's
like
in history books, but not the ones I read.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I've heard anything about it.
I know. It's like this one and the Rwandan genocide, both of them like happened very recently. And the Rwandan genocide even more frequently though. Or more,
yeah, like
not frequent.
I've heard about that
recent.
one. There's like, I've heard about the Rwandan one though. Like there's like documentaries. I remember learning about it in school.
That's because that happened in like 95, I think, or 4. Like we were both alive. We were little, but we were alive.
Yeah, yeah. But still, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder how many countries I'm just completely oblivious to how many like countries have gone through like genocide or like communist overthrows. Because I read a lot of books and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that, like, for instance, I read a book about Spain and had no idea that Spain had like this entire like dark period post World War II. I was like,
yeah, they tried.
Had no idea.
They tried communism out. I actually Googled a list of like countries that have tried communism out after I read this book because I was like, all right. I thought it was. I thought it was just Russia, China, North Korea, and
Cuba,
and like Venezuela back in the day.
Yeah, Venezuela.
I was like, those are the countries that have tried communism, and they're all crap holes. So
yeah, yeah, and therefore, if anyone is like, oh, it might work, I'm like, okay, like that's only 7 countries, like it's fine.
No, it's been tried a lot. Like a lot of European countries tried it. A lot of Asian countries tried it. Did you know that Vietnam is still communist to this day?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. So there's like a handful of countries that are still communist today. It's like China, Vietnam. Man, I should have there's like one in Africa and North Korea. And I think there's one more that's technically still communist today. But yeah, Vietnam's one of them. I was like, dang, didn't they learn anything from their like neighbors?
Are they doing okay?
I don't know, because that was my next question. I was
because I also don't know anything about, except that I know we get like textiles from them, right? Like all of a sudden now I'm like, wait.
I know. So when we went to Thailand, because Thailand borders Vietnam too. So when we went to Thailand, I know that we thought about going to Vietnam because we were like, oh, let's just hop over the border and go to Vietnam and check it out. Because you can. So, I mean, like, I don't know that you can just hop over the border, but I do know that you can go into Vietnam because we had friends that went into Vietnam. And so, because we had friends that went to Thailand, like, I think like 6 months before us. So we like picked their brain and we're like, okay, like, where did you go? What did you do? And we were like, we're thinking about going into Vietnam. And the only thing that they said was like, it's really poor. Like, they were like, we've seen a lot of poor countries, but it's like, it's sad poor. Like they walked through the town and they said that it wasn't even like, it wasn't fun kind of like, oh, we can buy whatever we want here. And, like whatever. It was like people starving on the streets, like a lot of homeless people, like in general, like they just said it was a completely different experience compared to Thailand right across the border.
Yeah.
That being said, after reading this book, I was like, again, I was doing all this research on communism because at this point, like, my last couple books have all been about communism unintentionally. No. I didn't even know this book was about communism. Olivia told me to read this book and I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Where's Cambodia? So I didn't know that this had ever happened at this point. So I was like, man, I should probably learn a little bit more about communism. So I went and researched a little bit about Vietnam. Apparently it's like moving up in the world rankings for nicer places. I think it ranks like 106th as far as like best countries to live.
Wait, Vietnam?
Yeah, which is still a communist country, which is crazy. But then I, was doing some thinking, and 106 is not great. I mean, I think there's like 3 countries in North America. Yeah. There's like, I don't know, like 15 in South America, and then you've got like, I don't know, another 25 in Europe.
Yeah.
So basically you're worse than all of that. So 106 is not good. But apparently it used to be like 130. So it's like moving up in the world as far as places to live. That's what I read.
So communism might be working.
I guess. I don't know. And then it was saying something about it not being like a true form of communism because it's like kind of like China. China's not real communism. It's more of like pseudo communism because there's still a little bit of free market in China and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. There's like all sorts of weird stuff. But essentially, like I knew nothing about how prevalent communism was. Because then I Googled list of countries that have tried communism. And I mean, there's probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 in Europe that have all tried it. I mean, there's probably another 10 or so in Africa that have tried it. A lot in Asia. Like it swept through Asia for a while. And then South America has had a handful of countries. And then, you've got like Cuba and a couple island countries have tried it. And so, I mean, I was shocked with how many, I was shocked with how many people have tried communism. And it still just never worked. Not once.
Like this was the pinnacle. We made it.
Yeah. But people still think that it's a good idea. Did you watch my video that I put up the one that was like, should we try communism? Should we give communism another try? My super clickbaity video.
You mentioned it. I only ever listened to the podcast like on Apple Podcasts or whatever, but I meant to go over to YouTube and like check it out only because like it's a subject that's super interesting to me. But I made like the most clickbaity title ever. Should we try communism again? And I think for the short video for this one, I'm going to try to do another clickbaity communism video because it got like, I mean, it's like 2,500 views now. So like not a ton, but like 2,000. I mean, that's pretty good for me for just starting off. But the crazy part is that there were on that video, I think there's like I think it's like 180 comments. It's like almost 200 comments on that video at this point. That's a lot.
And like 30% of them are people saying that we should try communism again. How nuts is that? Like a third of them are like, we should. Like one person on there commented like 1,000 times. And he was crazy. He literally was like, communism is inevitable. Like it will sweep the entire world. Like communism is the future. Like he like compared communism to Christ. And he was like, it's the real second coming is the communist like takeover of the world. Yeah. But he was like dead serious. I was like, dude, like, are you crazy?
No, like I think that, I don't know. I think the reason why it's so appealing and people keep trying it is because it is like so close to what like an ideal utopian society would be like. But like human nature.
But is it?
I don't know. I don't know enough to argue about that.
I've been trying to learn a lot more about it, like I said, but it just doesn't seem like I just don't understand the people that are like all in on communism.
Yeah.
Like you personally, do you want a shot at being, I know this is going to sound super bad. Do you want a shot at being better than other people? Like, do you want to like know that if you put in the hard work, like you can make it further than somebody else? Does that appeal to you?
I mean, yeah.
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 I mean, it does to me for sure. Like knowing that like there's a direct not I guess a direct correlation because you can work hard and go nowhere, but like a pretty strong correlation between hard work and like outpacing other people. Mm-hmm. And it's not even so much about like, I hope other people do worse. It's just like, I want to be rewarded for how hard I work because I'm willing to work hard.
Yeah. I think like the appeal comes from like, is it really that much more work for like, or is the work of a plumber equal to like the work of a, you know, school teacher to a surgeon? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah.
Obviously, like education is different, but like they're all vital to a society. So like, let's value their work equally. You know what I mean? And I think that's where like, there's like that tiny caveat where it's like, okay, like I can agree with that, right? Like I actually can, but.
Kinda. But the other thing is the other part that I don't get is like, I don't know, if you really think that all work is the same, then why don't you just become a doctor? You know, like that's the part I don't get.
No,
like
because my heart calls me to be a plumber.
Well, then too bad. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't, like, I don't know. Everybody has, at least in America, everybody has the option to do literally
Relate it that way.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry, cut out there again for a sec.
I know. I tried not to point it out.
I know. It's fine.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's the appeal.
Yeah, but like, what do you want to do?
And you're right. Like in America, you can choose.
What do you want to do with your life? Like if you could choose to do anything, what would you do?
I mean, I think what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. That's pretty good then, right? And you're doing just fine. Like, that's what I don't understand. It's like, I don't know. I don't think I would change anything about what I'm doing either. I really do like what I'm doing. And like I said, I have the options to do whatever I want. And if I work hard, I can make it work. I don't know. I just don't understand that mentality of like, I want.
Well, then maybe it's for people that feel like they don't have that opportunity. Like those cards aren't, you know, available to them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I could understand that. So like, maybe that's why communism's been tried in like some of these third world countries, you know, like some of these countries where people feel stuck.
I mean, they're generally like revolutions, you know, like, or post-war when they're really poor, like they're like, we don't have the resources or opportunity. So.
Yeah. Cause I mean, that's essentially what this book is about. I mean, I guess that's a good transition. So this book is essentially post-war revolution that took over and installed communism in Cambodia. Man, I just blanked there for a sec. But installed communism into Cambodia. And that was, well, before we go into that, because I want to have one other question. Because my mind was all over the place while reading this book. But it was the timelines and kind of like the consequences of a lot of things that I was thinking about a lot. And the Vietnam War was not a super popular war, I would call it, in the United States. Like, I think that's a pretty, I don't know. Fair assessment. Because people felt like there was no reason to be there. However, in my mind, I saw like a direct causation between, I mean, how many people, they ended like us pulling out of Vietnam and then 2 million Cambodians dying in a genocide. Does that make sense? Because the war ended in 75. It was 74 or 75. We pulled out of Vietnam. And then North Vietnam, which was who we were fighting, essentially worked with the Khmer Rouge to take over Cambodia. So it was because we pulled out of Vietnam that they were able to reallocate their forces, basically bomb Phnom Penh, encircle it, take over the capital with the help of the North Vietnamese armies. And that led to like the complete, you know, killing of roughly 1/4 of the population of Cambodia. Yeah, so when people kind of talk about the uselessness of the Vietnam War, part of me thinks like, I guess, what warrants staying in conflict with other people? And then do you feel like the United States like has that responsibility, or would you want the responsibility on that for the United States? I don't know. I feel like we're kind of like living this scenario with a couple different fronts right now in the United States. You know, like with Ukraine, there's a lot of talk about people going into Ukraine, and like our involvement with Ukraine. Obviously, same thing with Israel. And there's, I mean, a huge demographic of people that basically are saying like anti-interventionist, we should stay out of everything. And then you have basically every politician just wanting to spend more and more money on these wars. And I just was wondering, like, where, like, does that life, is that, I don't know, like, is that important? Do you feel like that's important? I feel like reading it in kind of like in hindsight, it's almost like really sad that we pulled out of Vietnam.
Yeah, I didn't understand that timeline, or I don't know. I feel like it's probably unfair to expect the United States to.
I'll cut that part out because that was bad. But so you said, I feel like it's unfair too, and then you cut out.
I feel like it's an unfair expectation to think that the United States, especially alone, should be upholding every other country, you know?
Yeah.
But the alternative is really terrible, to think like, oh, we'll just be passive if we know what's going on. Like in the age of not the internet, it was probably easier to do that, or at least you actually could legitimately not know, you know? So I don't know, like, really where the line is or what the best course of action is against that. Because at the end of the day, different countries have different values. They have to make their own decisions for their people. They have different cultures. And, you know, I don't know.
It's so hard because
It's hard, especially though, like if you go in, like for instance, in Vietnam, and then you pull out and it's like a vacuum. Like, so the presence might have, like, had there not been a presence at all, would it have had the same outcome?
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I don't know. But it's like, I don't know. I'm always pretty, I don't know. I'm like Rob, you know, I'm kind of conspiratorial. I like to think, I like to go down those rabbit holes. And Vietnam was one that I mean, I've read a lot about, and I've, you know, I've done a lot of research on, and there are a lot of people who thought that we were, I mean, because the original reason why we were in Vietnam was essentially fighting communism. And then there were a lot of people that thought we were in there for the wrong reasons, you know, that we weren't actually fighting communism. But like, again, hindsight's 2020, but you look at it now and you see, like, were the people pushing for the Vietnam War, like, correct in their assessment that without intervention there, communism would take over? Because yes, I mean, that's exactly what happened in that part of the world. So it's like, I don't know. It just made me feel a little bit more, I don't know. It almost made me feel like, just kind of going over the timelines and everything in this book, it made me feel a little less conspiratorial like overall, I think, and kind of make me feel like, man, maybe it is good to be a little bit involved around the world. I don't know. You know, like, you don't want to be into people's lives, but at the same time, you also don't want 2 million people to die.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, it's hard. I don't know. It's like a hard thing to balance. And I think anybody who says, you know, like, all one way or all the other way just isn't really thinking about it critically. You know what I mean? Like, if you're like all in on every conflict and you're like this crazy warmonger who's like, we need to be the world police, like, you're obviously not thinking about it correctly. But at the same time, like, you can't look at history and be like, okay, we need to live like a 100%, you know, anti-interventionist policy when you can see the direct correlation between what happened in Vietnam and that part of the world. I mean, literally just falling apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I just found that whole timeline very interesting because the Vietnam War to me was, I don't know, so controversial. And then
super controversial, but also, like, it seems like now people are pretty confident in saying that, like, we shouldn't have been there at all.
Yeah, people definitely are pretty confident saying that we shouldn't be there at all. I mean, there's a lot of people that say, like, that are still of that mindset. Like, there was no reason to have ever gone. But I mean, I don't know, like how many people dying does it really take to say that we should be there or not? I don't know. Because again, it's such a hard question because like obviously Hitler and World War II, nobody ever says there's no like we shouldn't have gone there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a little bit more than 2 million people. It was a lot more than 2 million people that died, but still, like, I mean,
well, if we had the opportunity to stop it at 2 million, would we have? Like, what's your benchmark?
Yeah, exactly. But then on the flip side, like Russia, I mean, there were, I think they said 4 million people died in Russia because of communism.
Yeah.
Like a genocide of 4 million people, but it was their own people. I guess, I mean, so was Cambodia. So like, is it okay if a government kills its own people? Whereas in
like Germany was going into other countries
and killing Jews, like, does that make sense? Like, is that like the line? What is the line for people? Is the line governments can kill their own citizens? Because I feel like that's almost the line for a lot of people. Yeah,
actually, that makes a lot of sense to me.
But I don't think that it should be that. Like,
I'm not agreeing with it.
That seems absurd to me. Again, this whole story to me was completely crazy, which is why, in my opinion, I loved this book because it was a part of the world that I hadn't ever like read about, but except I almost had, again, because I've read a lot and learned a lot about Vietnam. But it's interesting to read a book that has to do with the consequences of Vietnam and then kind of like really dive into what that looked like.
Yeah.
So I thought this book was really, really, really good. The main criticism of this book, which I'm interested to hear your take, is that it was almost hard to read because it was told from the perspective of a 5-year-old. Did you feel like that took away from the story?
No. And I wrote this down as like one of my conversation things that I wanted to talk about was like autobiographies or experiences from a child's perspective versus an adult's perspective. I think that when children share their stories, I mean, they're sharing it from like an unbiased, not political standpoint. So it's very much like, this is what I experienced. They don't have this like filter of like who the person is and why they're doing it or how it came to be. It's just like, this is what I'm experiencing. Like, this is what is actually happening. And I think that for like a people that experience like really traumatic experiences, I don't know how many people I don't know at what point your brain actually flips and stops like having the capacity to think about the politics of the situation. Like, they're just living with like the actual consequences of what's happening around them, much more like a child. And so I think that it actually painted probably a more real perspective. And I liked that it was somebody who kind of like grew up in it too. Like, this is the way it affected this like coming generation. Like, this, look at what happened, because it's not just like adults who like their jobs were interrupted, it was like, this is what the children are going to have to pick up and carry because of the choices of their elders, if you will,
Yeah.
Anyway, so I actually really liked that. And I think it's a lot more of an honest look at the situation even.
I agree. And there were a couple things that I read about the book that kind of really solidified that for me. So there was some leader, can't remember. I wrote it down. Some person's name, Saudi Lay, which is the co-founder of the Khmer Institute, a site that defines itself as a web-based information source on Cambodia and Cambodians. So somebody who's like dedicated their life to the study of Cambodia. She said that she hated the book because I know, I was like, whoa, like, this is some harsh reviews here. But she hated the book because she felt like it was just filled with complete inaccuracies because no 5-year-old would be able to remember what was exactly said. No 5-year-old would be able to remember, like, the person who wrote this book wrote it when she was 40 years old. but she's reflecting on a time when you're 5 or 6. And I don't know about you, but I could not write a book about last week, let alone write an entire book about when I was 5 years old. I know that we went to Florida a lot and that we saw the Blue Angels, but I have no idea what anybody said to me. I have no idea what those interactions were. And so a lot of people, well, her specifically, but then in Goodreads, there are a lot of people as well. Any of the 1-star reviews basically said the same thing. They were just like, it's completely inaccurate. Like, there's no way that this is historically accurate at all. But so I was like, like, I get it. I get why people don't like it, except for I was just continuing to do more and more research on this book. And somebody pointed out that the book was not written to be historically accurate, but rather it was written to give you a more emotional connection to how she felt as a 5-year-old. And so the stories may not have actually happened that exact way. The exact, what am I trying to say? The exact like
timing or anything.
Conversations may not have happened between her and her father and her mother, because I mean, it's impossible to remember that. However, it is a historically accurate representation of how she felt as a 5-year-old, as well as some like key points in her life. Like, obviously she probably remembered somebody trying to rape her at some point. Like, that's something you don't forget, you know. Also the hunger, that's something you don't forget. And so the story was written more to put you into the place of a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I think it goes till she's 10 years old, living through this experience and losing her house, everything that she knows as a kid, and living through this communist revolution, working in labor camps, working as a child soldier. And like you said, the actual events may not have been real, but her emotional, I guess, damage, or like the emotions that the trauma that it caused for her, that is real. Like, that you can't take that away from her.
Yeah.
And that's what the book was supposed to portray. It was supposed to portray how awful that experience or that period of time in Cambodia was as an individual. It wasn't supposed to be a word for word recount of what happened with her and her family. And so I was just like
who's expecting that? Like, I know,
that's such an unfair criticism in my opinion. So like, anybody that said that after I read that was like, yeah, you idiot. Like, of course it's not going to be. She's 5 years old, but it's not like those things. It's not like she at 5 years old didn't go hungry and didn't have a hard time and didn't have to move away from her home and didn't have to walk constantly. You know what I mean? Like, all of those things happened.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to argue, like, whose history is supposed to be written by if not the people that lived it? You know? Like, just because, like, every conversation isn't real, like, she clearly lived it. Like, that's what makes it the history of that country. Like, you know? And so to like criticize that because there might be some false memory, you know, like, I mean, she lived it. Like, is your story that you lived from your memory false news, like false information, not real history? You know, like, I'm not questioning you and your childhood and your memories, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's just like a silly argument.
That was the same argument that was given for the Gulag Archipelago, actually. Most of the people who hated that book said the same thing. They were like, none of this is true. It's all stories. It's all passed down history. It's all like an oral history of, you know, what happened to individuals while they were living in these gulags.
Spoiler, that's what all history is.
Well, yeah, up until the last probably 20 years before we recorded literally everything with our phones. Outside of that period of time, like, what are we supposed to throw away thousands of years of history because we didn't have cell phones to capture every single instant of our lives? So we can't believe anything that's ever happened.
Because literally all architects do even is like dig up like anything, bones, weapons, journals, or whatever, and create a story around the things that they find to make the items make sense. Literally, you have to have a story. Like, that's what history is. Like, you're creating a story. So, like, that's just a dumb argument.
It really is. But it has surfaced quite a bit in my kind of like research of what people think about like books in general. Yeah. A lot of books. The only book that I think that I've read that's gotten off like scot-free as far as people criticizing the accuracy of the stories is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And the only reason why that one has been so like well respected is because basically everything with Hitler was documented.
Yeah.
Because he wrote speeches, like he wrote it, like he, you know, there was just so much about him. He was in the war, like he, you know, everything in his life was documented. But I feel like that's almost an anomaly. Again, if you're not one of the most important dictators of all time, then your life is not going to be written down.
Or if you're not the latest one who doesn't just burn everything because they don't want anyone to remember. I mean, like, really, like, yeah. And then all you have to go off of is like what people remember, you know?
Yeah. And to say that you can't write history because you can't get it verbatim of what somebody said, it's just a joke. Like, it's just stupid.
It really is.
It's a dumb argument. And it just made me mad because that was probably 90% of the 1 and 2 star reviews on Goodreads. The rest of the reviews were all like, I can't get over the fact that she sounds like a 5-year-old. I'm listening to a 5-year-old tell a story. Like, it drives me nuts. And
I loved it.
Yeah, see, I did too.
I really liked it. It's the second autobiography that I've read from the perspective of a child. And I loved the last one and I loved this one.
What was the last one? I just think
it's an amazing perspective.
Do you not remember?
Like deer in the headlights. It was a book club book. You can ask Olivia.
What was it about?
Oh my, I don't have my phone.
What period of time?
I can't do anything without my phone. I think I own it, but heaven forbid I find anything on this bookshelf. It was about a little boy from, I'm like the worst, from somewhere in the Middle East that moved to like Oklahoma. I think it was Oklahoma with his mom and sister.
The Kite Runner? Just kidding. I know that's not what it is.
It's he wrote I think he was in like 4th grade or something. The book is from like his perspective in 4th grade. Good grief, I can't remember what it's called. It was so good. I gave it 5 stars.
Really?
I don't know.
Man, I'll have to add that one on here. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was an interesting perspective. Yeah. I thought it was a way of kind of also not being too, I don't know, almost not being too cynical. You know what I mean? Like the perspective is throughout the entire story is we're going back to our home. We're going back to our home. Like, how do I get back to my family? And so it made for a very good story, in my opinion, because it was hopeful throughout the entire book, regardless of all of these terrible, terrible things.
Yeah. See, hopeful.
You're right. Yep. It was hopeful. I mean, her perspective was hopeful. I mean, what was going on around her was, absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Like it was one of the saddest stories I think I've read in a really long time. But her, the entire time, she always thought that she was going to get back with her family and then that she was going to go back home or escape to America. There was always this kind of positive attitude from it that you can only get from a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like if she was 16 years old plus, or she was like a 25-year-old, like there's no way she would have been positive.
Yeah. I don't know how you would be. No,
at that point you're cynical for sure.
Yeah.
You watched 1/4 of the people in your country die. And you're cynical at that point for sure. So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I wonder if it's just people's inability to actually listen to other people's stories without feeling attacked or defensive or angry,
there are just a bunch of buttheads in this world. I think that's pretty much, I don't know, whatever. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, no,
like that's pretty,
all I would say.
Pretty
I don't know.
Pretty certain that there's just a bunch of buttheads in this world.
Yeah. I just think it's really sad that we can't even listen to a 5-year-old, or an adult share her experience from when she was 5 through something horrific without critiquing it,
Well, and I'm sure the person that wrote that review is some, person who's never experienced anything remotely like that in their lives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then there's like fake news. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so stupid. Like, what a stupid argument. You know, she forgot what her dad said. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. You weren't actually in Cambodia, were you? Idiot. You know, like what do you want to read at that point? Like, what kind of books really turn you on?
Well, that's my question.
Like, if you're that dumb, don't read. That's my opinion. I used to be in the opinion everybody should read. Everybody should read. It makes you a better person. Unless you're that stupid. If you are that stupid, just don't read anymore. Go stick your head in the dirt somewhere and just have fun being a grumpy old piece of crap. Because that is like, nobody should give this book a 1 star.
No.
Like, you can't give this a 1 star. I mean, like, what do you like? Yeah, nah. Sorry, your whole family died and that you had to walk forever and that you didn't get any food and somebody, you know, they tried to kill you, but it was boring. You know what I mean? I just don't know. Some people on this planet, I don't understand. Like, what do you want from a book at this point? And again, if this isn't your cup of tea, that's fine. But you can at least appreciate it for what it is. Like, it's I mean, it's an important piece of history, a very important piece of history. And I say that from somebody who literally didn't know anything about it until last week, but an important piece of history that I feel like this is why you read. You know, you read because you're supposed to learn these things. Even if you learn about them when you're 30. Like, it's still important to learn.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I don't know. Rate it at least 3 stars. Like, don't be an idiot.
Your life was only worth the 1 star. Sorry.
I know. I saw a funny...
Your life story.
I saw a funny... this is completely off topic, but I saw a funny Instagram post today that was like... It was a review of a doctor, and it was a 4-star review of the doctor. And it said, Dr. Phil... Or it's like, Dr. John literally saved my life. And the doctor commented on it and was like, I don't know what I have to do to get that last star. You know, like some people, like, just give it 5 stars. Like, why do you have to be such a dick? He saved your life. Oh my gosh. That's what I feel like when people rank books like this. Like, it's so stupid. Like, all right, be cool. Like,
what possessed you to spend the time to listen to the book, if not?
I don't know. Yeah. So, the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is because I don't know, it painted the Khmer Rouge soldiers in a very, I would feel like this book painted the Khmer Rouge soldiers in a very bad light. Almost worse than I would say a lot of historical fiction and also like historical books painted like German soldiers in. You know what I mean? Like, I almost feel like the cop-out always in German history books is always like, well, German soldiers were just doing what they were told. They didn't actually want to kill Jews. Like, they just were doing their job. They just didn't want to lose their families. And that's kind of the perspective that's given quite a bit when talking about Germany. But in this book, I felt like it was the complete opposite. She hated the Khmer Rouge soldiers, like hated them. You could tell that throughout the entire book. And I wanted to get your take on kind of what you think led to that perspective. And also, do you think that was like an accurate representation of history, or do you think similar to kind of the take on German soldiers that they were just kind of doing their job?
I have 2 thoughts. So the first one is, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but in her description, and so it'd be interesting to go back and like maybe see if this is actually what the history was. But from her perspective, Pol Pot, who was kind of like the leader, right? He was kind of like a shadowy figure that didn't really like, everything kind of happened overnight. And so he wasn't this like takeover, I'm going to be your leader kind of a thing. It just kind of like
pause for a second.
Came into Cambodia.
Pause for a second. So, and the reason for that, because again, I trying to do research. He was actually trained by Mao Zedong in China, And so he was like taken to China to learn about communism and was like set in place to be the communist leader of Cambodia. And so after both North Vietnam and like the Khmer Rouge soldiers took over, he was then placed there as the leader from China. So like, I mean, it wasn't just like, that wasn't just like the feel of it. That's what actually happened. Like that was, he didn't have a very big presence there until after they took over.
Yeah. So then I think that like that twofold, that is why that would come into such play for her story then. So as a people, then it's different than like Hitler or any other revolution really that like picks their leader. The leader like rises up and they're like, this is the person who's going to like save our country, or that they kind of like all rally around and kind of create like a godlike person, you know, that they start to worship. If he was kind of like this like shadowy figure that didn't come in until after the soldiers were already creating like, you know, havoc and killing people, you know, then all of the focus and hate would go towards the soldiers, because you don't have this like person yet to be like, this is their fault. They're like the ones doing it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then I think also the fact that it's from her perspective as a 5-year-old, again, she doesn't understand the politics of it. So it really is like, I only see these people doing the bad deeds. So if you're wearing that uniform or you're a part of that, then you're the bad guy. You know, like there's no other way to like distinguish it. So I think it's twofold, both of those. And I actually am curious, like, well, you answered my question with the history of that. Like, I wonder how much, like, are there any other examples that the history has been like that where they've like placed a communist leader as opposed to it being this like savior complex almost, you know?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that was, I kind of figured that was the only way to do it was through like a savior complex.
Yeah, no. He was placed by China. Like picked. That's thrilling. Schooled in the school of, no, really, like he was like taught how to do communism by China, which is interesting.
That's terrifying. Yeah.
And what a person to learn from. I mean, Mao Zedong probably, I mean, I think Mao is responsible for the most deaths in history. So, I mean, killing 1/4 of your country seems like chump change compared to him, but pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So wait, there was one other. Oh, do you have anything else that you want to talk about? Because then I was going to go into rankings.
I'm like reading my notes real quick. I think you actually answered a lot of my talking points without even meaning to. I thought it was interesting they had pho for breakfast.
Yeah, that just doesn't seem like a breakfast food. Do you like pho?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Rob loves it.
I know
and
he
that's
does.
Probably from growing up in Malaysia. Yeah. And I never really liked it before, but he definitely likes it. And when we lived up here before, that's what he had for lunch like every single day. Like he pretty much only had that for lunch. And then we just started eating it a lot, but never in my dreams would I have pictured that as a breakfast meal. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But like that, that was like the opening scene. And I just remember being like, I knew nothing about Cambodia. And all of a sudden it was like the one thing that I could have said like, oh, they eat pho. Like also wrong. Like, no, it's not a dinner. Like, no.
I like pho, but it's not as good as ramen. And so why not just have ramen?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. You know, I definitely agree with that. For sure. I prefer ramen.
100%. So I'm always just like, yeah, out of all of the Asian soups, why not just have ramen?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my opinion. But
yeah. No, I agree.
So what would you rank this book on a scale of 1 to 5 for fun and 1 to 5 for importance? Holy cow. It's late. It's late, guys. Anybody who's listening to this episode, it's late. And there's a 2-hour time difference. So it's not even as late for you as it is for me.
No, I know. I'm so sorry. Okay, I think I rated it a 4 for fun. And I would probably rate it a 4 to a 5 of importance. And I like reading books like this, so that's why I say it's fun. It's not like a cheerful book for sure, but like it's one of my favorite things to read about because I feel like it makes me smarter and more empathetic. And so I think they're fun. And then importance, I mean, we've already said this, I literally knew nothing about Cambodia. And I think the impact that Vietnam had on Cambodia is fascinating. Like now that you pointed that out. So I'd say it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, fun's definitely the wrong word. I know I said fun because I had like fun books at the beginning of my podcast, but but no, it shouldn't be fun. It should be like,
well, even enjoyable. Like,
I know,
I don't know.
enjoyable is not the right word either, but you know, just like, I don't know what the word is. There's got to
like
be some
page turning.
I don't know. Yeah, not boring. Not boring. You know what
not
I mean?
boring.
You know what I mean? Like that's the way that I do it.
Yeah.
Do I zone out on listening to it, or like do I never want to read the book while you know?
Yeah.
This was a book that I wanted to finish. Like I was constantly trying to listen to it. So, for me, I would say that this book is a 4 for fun and a 5 for importance. Kind of the same thing. I don't know that it's a 5 for fun because I don't know. It just wasn't quite there as far as that goes. But I did cry at the end of the book. So that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I don't cry very often. I think I've read now, I think this is my 3rd book that I've ever cried in, which is crazy because I honestly never cry ever. But since starting this podcast, 3 books have made me cry, which is insane. Because I think the last time that I cried before starting reading was when Rupert died. When we were, I think I was a sophomore in high school, maybe a freshman in high school.
No. In high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it
Yeah.
I think I had gone a healthy 20-ish years. No, not 20. Sorry, a healthy 15 years without crying. 15 years.
A long time. Yeah.
15 years without crying. And then since starting this podcast, I've cried now with 3 books. This one, Only Playing This Guy, and The Book Thief. I think those are the only 3.
Yeah.
But this one did it. This one was my 3rd.
Yeah.
I definitely cried at the end of this book. When she sees her sister again for the first time in like 20 years, 30 years, like that was emotional. It was a good book. And so, I mean, it makes you feel all the feels. You learn while you're feeling all the feels. Like, it's a good book. Like, that's all I can ask for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
So I'm trying to do something new. I want to say, who would you suggest this book to? Like, what kind of person do you think would enjoy this book?
Ooh. Like, just like a general who would enjoy this book, or a specific person?
What? No, don't call somebody out. Shannon, read this book. No.
That was my first thought. I was like, I don't even know that many people, and it was our book club book, so I got nothing.
No. I mean, like, what kind of person should read this book? Like, if you enjoy X, Y, and Z, read this book. Or is this a book that you think everybody should just read regardless? Okay. You know, like there are some books that I think everybody should read. I think 1984 is a book every single person should read because it's just amazing. But then there are some books where I'm like, only a handful of people need to read this book. Like if you like X, Y, and Z, read this book. Is this a book that you would say everybody should read, or is this a book that you would recommend to a certain group of people?
I would say almost everyone. I think I would likes to.
All right, just go ahead and repeat that. You cut out of
what?
I think you cut out at almost every one, and that was it. So just start over.
I know we've done so well.
I know. Ish. I think I'm only gonna have to cut out 2 parts.
I know, that's pretty good. I was gonna say I think that it is a good book for anyone that enjoys world history or global politics, and I think it's a good book for people that enjoy reading.
We were doing so good.
I know, we really were.
I heard global politics. That was it.
Okay, you want me to start all over?
Yeah. Well, you just start at anybody who enjoys global politics and
world history. Did I ever say that? I think I've beat that into the sand. And anyone that enjoys reading people's stories, I think that, but I actually do think that most people could benefit from reading it. you know. I actually do, especially if you're like a United States citizen who doesn't understand Asian Pacific. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Anyway, that like whole politics and area, I think that you could benefit from reading it. So
Yeah. I'm going to say anybody who thinks that you should give communism another go round, go ahead and read this book. I think you will be quick to find out that it didn't work out so well for Cambodia. I'm going to say anybody who thinks that you have it rough here in America at almost any time in history outside of slavery, go ahead and read this book, because I do think slavery was terrible. But outside of that, the United States has done a pretty bang up job of being all right, of a place to live. Because this was not an all right place to live. So go ahead and read this for a little bit of perspective. And I would say if you like historical fiction, I feel like this would fit really well in that aisle. It reads like a historical fiction, even though it's an account of a real person's life. I don't know that I would call it 100% nonfiction, because of, again, it being from the perspective of a 5-year-old, and the story's kind of, it balances that line between nonfiction and fiction in my world, in my eyes, and so it feels like a historical fiction. So if you really enjoy historical fiction, it's going to have all the same feels, but it's going to be more realistic than a historical fiction. So you'd probably really enjoy this book. And then, anybody who enjoys world history, I think this is an important, lesser known topic in history, at least from my perspective. And most Americans, I feel like, should read this book. Again, get some dang perspective. So that is my opinion on this book. So anything else that you have for the podcast?
I don't think so. I'm excited. I listen every Wednesday. I'm excited for the other books coming up too.
You need to get on YouTube and watch the YouTube videos. They're fun.
I know. I will. I'll have to do I have to make an account to make comments? I don't even know how that works.
It's just a Google account. You can use your Gmail.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Google owns YouTube. They own everything.
I don't.
Google owns the world.
Well, I'll get on and I'll make some comments and stuff, because I enjoy looking or listening to everything, and I comment on everything on Instagram. So
okay. And then for anybody who liked you on the podcast, what's the next book we're doing?
We talked about Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, we're definitely doing Pride and Prejudice. I think that's in 4 weeks. I think 3 weeks. So. Okay.
I think so. I think it's end of May or June, beginning of June.
Nice.
But yeah, that's the only one I think we've officially picked out. But I have your book lineup is awesome. So
I know. I'm enjoying all of my books.
Yeah.
So far. Well, most of them. Actually, I hated last week's book, but
yeah.
Or 2 weeks.
You got to have some of those in there though, Yeah. That's going to happen eventually.
It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're reading East of Eden right now, right?
I am reading East of Eden right now, and I love it.
Really?
So far. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually picked up 2 more Steinbeck books just because I love the writing. I wish that I lived in a time where my first thought isn't very and super awesome. Yeah. I don't know, the language is beautiful and descriptive, but not too much. His storytelling is really cool. His characters are he's got a good grasp on his characters, so I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
I'm not super far into it. I'm I don't know. I'm 15% through the book, I think 20% through the book right now. And it's good. I like it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have other thoughts too. I was
Yeah.
I want the characters to do more.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. I think I've read enough classics to and not have a lot of expectations for a lot of action. Yeah. I feel like a lot of classic books are very slow in that regard. They're not plot driven, Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the classics that I've read that I would say otherwise. I mean, Frankenstein, which is my favorite classic.
Yeah, and I do love Frankenstein.
It's very quick paced, in my opinion. That one's constantly
and Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen's books are pretty quick paced as well.
To Kill a Mockingbird, I felt like was good.
Yeah.
Like that. I felt like it was decently quick. Actually, I don't know. That one wasn't actually that quick. It was just beautiful. I loved To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's true.
I'm trying to think what else.
Because like Crime and Punishment was slow.
Yeah.
For sure. So I don't know.
I like don't even know what else I read. I picked up Jane Eyre, and so I'm excited to read that. It's longer than I thought.
Yeah, it's way long. That's way longer than I thought. I was like, geez.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have picked it.
I did not realize it was that long, but I picked it up, so I'm gonna start that one, and then I don't know what else, but
nice. Yeah,
but you have a good list, so I'm excited.
The next really long book that I have that I'm like, holy cow, I don't know if I would have picked this is Mistborn. Do you know how long that is?
Is that Brandon Sanderson?
Yes.
Yeah.
So long.
We own a lot of Brandon Sanderson. They're on the top shelf.
How does he have time to write books that long?
I do not know.
Because he writes like 6 books a year, and they're all like 800 pages. Like I'm like, gee,
and people love them.
Oh, I mean, the Brandon Sanderson cult is deep, man.
Yeah.
He's got a fan base that, I mean, it's crazy. So
yeah,
I'm excited to read it. I think it'll be fun, but it's a lot longer than I thought. I was like, geez.
Yeah, Rob liked him. I'm pretty sure. I mean, we own them all, so he must have liked them. I don't know.
We'll see.
I don't know.
That's in like 2 weeks. I'm like, I need to kind of start that one.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll be a quick read, like some books are easier to read than others.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. We'll have you on again here shortly. At least, I mean, we'll have you on for sure for Pride and Prejudice, but we'll look at the book list and maybe have you on. We need to have Rob back on too.
Yeah.
If he has time to read. I don't know what it's like.
He has time to read.
He has time to read.
Yeah. We're becoming old people and we just like read in bed together, It's great.
I know that's what Olivia and I do now. I'm like, ugh, who have I become?
I know. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's not bad. I actually love reading now. It's been super fun. So
honestly, seeing the growth of that, I can't be proud, but I'm an older sister, so I can. And I was like the older sister that had to like steal your friends because I was too much of a book nerd to have any friends of my own. I'm proud. I'm so proud. And it's been so fun to watch.
No, I actually do love reading now. It's like kind of disgusting, but I do love it. It's so fun. So anybody out there who doesn't read a book. Dang it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
You just haven't found the right book if you don't like reading yet. You got to find the book.
I used to think that was such a dumb thing to say, but it is true. Also, I think you have to commit to it at first. Reading isn't something that you can kind of like hope to do one day. Reading is one of those things that like you have to say like, I'm going to read X amount of books this year, and you kind of have to force yourself to do it until you like reading.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? Like you don't just wake up one day and be like, I'm a reader now. Well, at least I didn't, for sure.
Yeah.
I had to be like, at first it was, I want to read a book a month. And so I did that for a little bit. And then now it's a book a week. But I now I enjoy reading to the point where like I could cruise through. I've read more than a book a week this year. There's like 3 or 4 books that I haven't even done podcast episodes on.
That's awesome.
But at first I had to say like, this is what I'm going to do. And then you find the books that you like and then it becomes easy.
Yeah.
But if you never really make that commitment, you're just never going to read.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Which is a bummer because reading is awesome.
Yeah. And you learn stuff. So like where Cambodia is on a map.
I'm pretty sure I know where it is. I know a lot more about it now though.
Nice.
So,
all right. Well, for anybody who's still listening at this point, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. I think that's everything. I think that's all the news for now. I think for anybody who's still listening, I should have hats and t-shirts in like the next 2 weeks. So if you want to support the podcast, get a hat or a t-shirt. I'll post about them on Instagram. So follow us on Instagram if you want a hat or a t-shirt. So I think those are coming in the next couple of weeks. So just kind of fun. I don't have a ton of them because they're mostly for me, but I am going to be selling a handful of them as well to help the podcast. So, all right. I know that's not like the most glowing recommendations. They're cool though. We'll see you next week on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in.